Is he a fraud? Is he mid? Does he power creep? Do we Doompost? The answer to that is quite complicated. Let's talk about Phainon. Disclaimer, if you want to pull for Phainon because you want him, then don't let this video dissuade you from pulling the character you want, pull for him. This video is just to give my reaction, thoughts, and critique on Phainon and his kit as a whole, as someone who kept up with the beta. This video will be divided into segments. Let us begin first with here's the gist of Phainon's ability. You can get Phainon's ult or you can activate it once you reach 12 stacks of Core Flame. You can have a max threshold of 15 stacks, so this is similar to Acheron's debuff stack. You can gain Core Flame through an ally giving Phainon a buff. If an enemy hits Phainon, if he uses his skill, giving him energy also grants him a stack. At the start of the battle, he also gets a stack. Once you reach 12 stacks, enter ult mode, remove teammates from the field, similar to Mo's. Gain 8 extra fixed turns to deal Onga Bongo damage. 8 turns are based on his base speed. Extra turns means he also does not expire buffs. On 8th turn, he explodes on his enemies and then he exits the mode, bringing his allies back and granting them speed. Basically, a sort of inverse of Robin. I forgot to mention other things he does, but I did not really include them because they are not related to major issues with his kit. This segment can be really difficult to gather my thoughts on, but I'll do my best, right? To begin with, Phainon's kit is an action value disaster. So when Phainon enters his, ult state, he basically departs the entire team, then he proceeds to aura form his enemies. He gets 8 fixed turns. 7 of those turns you can use different skills, which include like a destruction attack, an AoE counter, and also a big meteor strike. The 8 turns the big attack, then he exits his ult mode. Now these fixed turns are rooted to a percentage equal to his base speed. Why is this an issue? Well, in the endgame where your success or your score is dependent on the action value you finished, Phainon's fixed turns can feel like a playable lightning lord. Insert meme of unreachable side, you could understand where people can already find flaws in his kit already. Just to add another example, insert the image where you see Seeley taking the entire action bar. Now replace Seeley's with Phainon's and add in the MOC timer. Now you can see why this is a problem. You want to kill your enemy within a certain cycle, but your Phainon's fat ass is too fat and slow for his next extra turn to come up, and now the enemy gets to live in another cycle. But Penetrate, this seems more like an issue for people who want to do 0 cycles. They don't speak for majority of the player base. First off, fair point, right? Fair point. If you wanna be casual player, be brain dead like me, you can just plug auto Phainon, get over it, and get your stellar jades, no problem. You have to know, however, that a 0 cycle does show the limits of what a character can or cannot do. And this is more exacerbated as Phainon's kit is related to action value, and his team is obviously leaning for sustainless. And we know that every 0 cycle at this point must include sustainless unless you are casters. Now why does Phainon really want to go sustainless when, well, really there's no use for sustain when Phainon will just go solo ult mode against his enemies. If you believe that, you just want to enjoy the character, okay. But what if all of a sudden Phainon is having a difficult time with the endgame? Maybe because Hoyo is no longer shilling him, adds in gimmick mechanics, or worst of all, HP inflation. This can be problematic due to Phainon's. You probably heard of this with Firefly and Jingyu. High floor, low ceiling, that kind of bullshit. Their high damage is accessible to the player base, to the casual player base. Even with mid-ass relics or a free or easy to get unit that gives your DPS free stats. Or maybe their inbuilt kit has something that can be provided to them, like free crit rate, lots of crit damage, all that shit. However, you suddenly want to build them to be at their peak thanks to, of course, HP inflation. You notice some damage increase, but it isn't substantial enough. You've already reached your peak, and thus you want more. Relics and 4-star units cannot be the way anymore, and now you have to consider pulling for signature Lycones, Eidolons, new 5-star harmonies, Nihility units, all those supports. Excuse me. For Phainon, it's a similar case. Relics ain't saving him that much because his fixed turns are rooted on base speed. Therefore, speed boots, speed subs, speed buffs like Asta will not change this. If you want to increase his base speed, well, You gotta spend some cash for that way. You gotta pull for things that directly influence base speed, like his signature Lycone, Eidolons, and maybe future limited units that would change that. If only we lived in a world where his extra's turn speed is based on his speed buffs, there would be rooms for optimizations. You could bring back niche relic sets like the ones that give speed boost when using ultimate. What's the other one? You can also make use of Asta's ult, or even I forgot her name, Hanya. Hanya can provide this speed buff, which Phainon would want, right? And then everybody would really forget about Phainon's issue or issues with his kit, because now the speed would be based on his actual speed, including the buffs, but we don't live in that world. Other issues with his kit, he's oversaturates on attack percentage, crit damage, and to little extent damage percentage, which a lot of single target harmony units basically already provide. To be fair, you can just slot in a third support such as Tribby, Robin, Roan May, or maybe even a Cyper, or just pull a Ceridra. Do I agree with the people saying that he faced the issue of high floor, low ceiling? Yes and no. He does have a high floor, but let's not act like that ceiling can remain low all throughout. We know Jingyuan had an issue with Lightning Lord being set to only one cycle. Here comes Sunday, which basically fixes his issue. Now, Phainon is basically a playable Lightning Lord at this point. His issues can easily be solved if there's a unit that improves base speed, which will most likely come out sooner or later. Let's not forget that allies being deported did exist prior to Phainon's kit, such as Mose, so there are rooms for improvement in his kit. Maybe they release a unit that applies a debuff, a permanent debuff, right, on the enemy team once they no longer exist in shit. Or maybe they can enter Phainon's, departed state through follow-up attacks, all that other stuff. I'm just giving you, theoretical things that could potentially happen. People often compare Phainon to Firefly as if they are 100% similar, which they could be similar, but there are lots of things wherein Phainon beats Firefly in a lot of cases. First off, Firefly will not deal damage at all if the enemy is not weakness broken, and she does not scale from crit, so this could be applied to other super break DPS. But the thing is, if you can't break them and you don't scale from crit, you kind of are remaining at that baseline, and at that point you are only looking for speed subs, eidolons, relics, defensive shit, or other multipliers, because they can also gain shit from damage percentage, at least from what I've known, right? So if you are a super break enjoyer, you have to look for other, sources of buffs, like maybe eidolons or signature Lycons. Phainon, on the other hand, scales from crit, and he still has physical weakness implant in his advantage, so there is a room for improvement there. You also need to include supports. People were hypothesizing that Fugue would be a substantial upgrade to Firefly. Turns out she's not. Whereas for Ceridra, well, I'm believing on my right and left nut that she is most likely going to shield the shit out of Phainon. If you have seen in my previous video, I talked about Ceridra's Golden Boon. We can see from Ceridra's Golden Boons that it is quite synergistic with Phainon's Golden Boon, or even his kit, which provides action advance forward to the first unit in the lineup, that kind of shit. Basically, she's gonna be hyper scary support. I guess the issue still remains in that to make Phainon's ceiling higher, you had to spend Stellar Jades, because there are no free ways that I know of to increase his base speed at all. And people do not like pulling or spending Jades for a character that, has an obvious flaw in their kit, and they have to use more Stellar Jades to, pull for the new limited unit, or even an Eidolon or a signature Lycon. With that out of the way, let's talk about Phainons. I don't know what the term could be for this segment, to be honest. Maybe there's a better term out there, but this segment can also be a minor nitpick in his kit, but I'll just voice out my concern. One of Phainon's traces include getting a damage boost when he receives healing shield from an ally. Now, this damage boost, there are not a lot of ways for Phainon in his self-buffing kit that he gains a lot of damage boost. This is the only one I know of so far, aside from getting physical damage percentage from relics, right? The issue with this trace is that it sort of goes against what Phainon is all about, which is he 1v30s the enemy team. He's like a Technoblade. He already has built-in healing and damage reduction from one of his skills. So I don't really understand why they want us to run Phainon with a sustain when he makes your sustain leave the fucking battlefield. Instead, you could just run another Harmony support that would give a better buff than damage percentage. Let's say action value, crit rate, rest spend, death down, vulnerability, or even a tribute. The only time I could see a world where Phainon does not run Sustainless is if HSR devs decided to, inflate the HP again to the point that Phainon could not eliminate his enemies in under one ult. Then, upon exiting your ult, your 3 Harmony supports their free game. Dingyun's neck is about to get cracked again. Or maybe they would make enemies hit so hard that even during Phainos ult state, he basically gets knocked out. Sure, he has a revive, but you kind of see my point, right? You can't make full use of his ult. This Hoyo once again prepping up the future sustain unit as a unique buffer for Phainon. Just like how Hyacinth is basically good to casters or any HP unit, you should expect that the future sustain would basically, have a unique buff that any other Harmony support couldn't provide. My point is that Phainon is a hyper carry. His playstyle is basically him telling the world that he should be the only motherfucker getting them buffs. He makes your teammates get out and then proceeds to solo the enemy. So I don't really see the necessity of this trace wherein you are required to get a damage percentage boost. If it is gonna happen, then hopefully the sustain Giga buff so hard that the third Harmony unit buffs can't compete with it. Other minor nitpicks, he has a territory-like state yet he does not have a rest down. Acheron has a rest down. Even Casters has a team-wide rest. So I don't know why Hoyo decides to not give, Phainon a rest down. Maybe he has a bias against man. Now you probably have a question. Will I be pulling for Phainon? Well, it depends entirely on both Seridra and Hycelen's kit, to be honest. Hycelen is a physical dot unit, so basically she's another DPS. And Phainon is another destruction crit attack scaling DPS in which I already have a lot of, such as E1 S1 Yunli, an E4 S1 Clara. We also do have the original physical Trailblazer, so it is what it is. If Seridra does make a significant change to Phainon like Sunday is to Jingyuan, and wherein it makes it look fun, I guess, I would consider pulling for Phainon, but for me, I will just wait for the Seridra showcase. What are the cons to not pulling for Phainon? Well, it's simple. This is more a personal thing for me, but if I'm not pulling for Phainon, I won't have as much fun in the Divergent universe, the Protean hero shit where we get the golden boon blessings for Phainon. Sure, you could say that you could give it to other DPS units, all those other shit, but Phainon getting all those buffs from different kinds of blessings in the Divergent universe, I think it's gonna be really, really fun. And with that comes the end of today's video. Do you guys agree or disagree with my takes? Will you pull for Phainon or not? Comment it down below and share your thoughts. Make sure to leave a like, share, and subscribe. Hit the notification bell to be updated on Sloppy, Zenless Zone Zero, and Honkai Star Rail content. We are closing in with 100 subs. I really, really appreciate the support. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.